Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, August the 30th, 2020. It is 9:46 a.m. Central Time. I'm standing here in the middle of the sanctuary here at Victory Baptist Church. Typically at this time, I'd be getting ready to go live on the air for the Sunday School Hour at Victory Baptist Church because obviously we have been live streaming everything since this whole COVID-19 situation. We moved to live streaming only, then we went back to in-person, then we went back to live streaming, and then, today, on August the 30th, 2020, today is going to be kind of weird, all right? Here's what we're doing here at Victory Baptist Church. We're having an 11 a.m. service. That's it. We're not having Sunday School Hour. We're just having an 11 a.m. service in person. It will be live streamed. And then this evening, we'll go back to just live streaming only. Wednesday will be live streaming only. And then next Sunday, depending on what happens with the COVID-19 cases in the local area, we probably will have a Sunday School Hour and a morning worship in person. And then Sunday night, we'll go back to live streaming only. And then Wednesday, live streaming only. And then the following Sunday, we will see. We know we're fast approaching September. For all practical purposes, September is here, and what a lot of doctors and medical professionals are worried about is that September, October, November, and December, with flu season and COVID-19 still going around, that we're going to get a really crazy time. So we don't know what it's going to look like. That's the bottom line. We don't know what it's going to look like, and the bottom line is not only am I trying to figure out each week what to do, pastors all around the country are trying to figure out what to do. And for pastors, it's a difficult situation. You decide to stay open and people get COVID, then everyone gets upset with you. If you decide to close, people get upset with you saying you don't have enough faith and you're living in fear. So no matter which decision you make, you stay open, some people get mad. You close, some people get mad. That's led to lots of division, lots of difficulty, and lots of confusion. And I feel bad for every pastor trying to make the decision. I think the bigger the church, the more difficult it can be to figure out what to do. I think small churches are really, we have an advantage. Because we're small, we can be creative. It's not that difficult to let everyone know what's going on. You can be creative. I think you can have a service. You can do different things. It's far easier to do social distancing. It's so much easier with a small church to, I think, be creative. With a large church with large numbers, it's like, how do you work that? Your options are limited. I think they're limited, but I think big churches still can be creative and still come up with different things. But I'm saying all of this because I was sitting back in the sound booth hooking everything up for this morning's worship service, getting the computer hooked up and turning on all the equipment because I haven't used that equipment in a long time. So I wanted to make sure everything was working right. And in the sound booth, I looked over and there was a catalog from christianbook.com, kind of one of their little sales catalog, and christianbook.com, right, CBD. I've spent, I don't know how much money they've gotten from me over the years, but so I was sitting there, I hooked everything up, and I looked over, and I'm like, Christian Book Distributors, CBD. Okay, I haven't looked at one of these in a long time. So I picked it up, and now I just dropped it, but I picked it up, and I looked at the cover, and the first thing that jumped out at me was, The Harbinger Part 2. I'm like, oh no, The Harbinger, man, whew. Don't let me get me started on that one. You want a book, buy The Harbinger, the first one. And that book should be used in every seminary, Bible institute on hermeneutics of what not to do, how not to handle the Bible. The Harbinger is an example of modern day evangelical hermeneutical illiteracy. Okay, that's a mess. So I was like, that's The Harbinger Part 2. I didn't know we had a Part 2 coming out. I'm like, that's no good. You Are Never Alone by Max Lucado. All right, that's typical kind of evangelical stuff. All right. Oh, Through the Bible by J. Vernon McGee, his 5-volume commentary set. That's pretty good. And on sale for $72. Usually it goes for $200. So I'm like, that's really good. Maybe I should get a copy of that for our church library. I'm like, maybe. All right. Jesus Among Other Gods by Ravi Zacharias. Okay. That was a pretty famous book. They're selling it for $5 now, so it's kind of lost its power. But then when I say lost its power, it's not as relevant as it was when it was first released and it was talked about a lot. Now it's kind of just it's in the bargain bin is where it is. We got a book here by Dr. David Jeremiah, Discovering God's Presence and Power in Your Tomorrow. Discovering God's presence and power in your tomorrow. Sounds like very positive modern evangelicalism. But here is the book that caught my attention. At the very top of this little sales catalog for September, October 2020, over in the top right-hand corner, there's an image of a book. There's no description. There's no information. It just says the post-quarantine church, 6 urgent challenges and opportunities. I'm like, well, that's interesting. That caught my attention. And the reason it caught my attention is since COVID-19 started, I've been challenging the church to respond to it in a certain way that hasn't really, the church at large clearly isn't listening to me, okay? But, so I was really trying to get Christians to respond the right way, but I've been asking this question over and over and over. What is the church going to look like after COVID-19 is long gone, after it's come and gone, okay? However it goes away, whatever takes place. But at some point, when we move past all of this and life returns to some kind of normalcy, all right? People are going back to concerts, sporting events. People are coming back to church. What is the church going to look like? How is it going to be different, right? And so I've been asking that question. I've been trying to get people to have that conversation, trying to get people to think about it, trying to get people to email me and give me their thoughts and their predictions. All right? And it sparked some conversation, not as much. I mean, I thought everyone would have an opinion. But the more, I just really keep trying to figure out what is the church going to look like? Where is the church headed? So to see that a book is out called The Post-Quarantine Church, 6 challenges and 6 urgent challenges and opportunities, I was like, okay, now this is going to give us at least some insight to how at least some element of Christianity is at least going to say, here's what we need to do. It's going to offer at least some kind of advice, some kind of a blueprint. And obviously there'll be churches that follow it. There'll be pastors who read it and follow it and try to implement some of this. So I wanted more information about the book. It says to turn to page 12. So let me go to page 12 of this little sales guide. And this is what we find. All right? This is what we find. New, The Post-Quarantine Church by Tom, Thom, S. Rainer, Rainer. Tom S. Rainer. All right? Now, I guess you would say Tom. Tom. All right? Thom. All right? However you want to pronounce his name. All right? Maybe it's Thom S. Rainer. I don't know. But however you want to pronounce his name. This is what it states about the book. All right? It's new, The Post-Quarantine Church. Are you wondering how your congregation can navigate a post-quarantine world? Let this trustworthy guide act as your personal church consultant. Gathering fresh insights from thousands of surveys, Rainer and his team help you lead the gathered church effectively, reach people digitally, rethink your facilities, serve your community in new ways, and more. 112 pages from Tyndale, They have it currently on sale for $6.99. If you buy 10 or more, you can get them for $5.99 each. Again, it's called The Post-Quarantine Church by Thom S. Rainer, Rainer. If I'm completely messing up that name, I completely apologize. I didn't even think about how to say the name when I picked this up. If you don't know, he wrote a book called The Autopsy of a Deceased Church. All right, which is kind of an interesting book if you haven't read it. Basically, what he does is he draws on 25 years of experience tracking these patterns of churches that died, churches that just came to an end. And so then you don't want to follow those patterns, obviously. Now we could argue all day about the theology of it, and well, we won't get into a discussion there. So, the post-quarantine church. So I saw this and I'm like, I wonder if it's available on my Kindle. Because, I do a lot of my reading on my Kindle. So I grabbed my Kindle and I went and opened it up, and it's not currently available. It's available for pre-order, but it doesn't come out till, I think, September the 8th. So I'm like, okay, well, does it give me any more details? Here's what if you go to Amazon, this is what you'll find, or in the Kindle store, or if you just go to Amazon. Here's a little bit more information. It comes out September the 8th, 2020. It's going to be $12.34 for the Kindle, $12.99 for the hardcover. All right, which is just weird that the digital version is almost the same price as the hardcover, because you think the Kindle digital version, it's just the book. Like, there's no paper, there's no binding, there's no cover, there's no shipping, but all right, that's a whole different story. All right. So here we go. The Post-Quarantine Church. Here's some information they give us. Here's the full title on Amazon. The Post-Quarantine Church. 6 urgent challenges and opportunities that will determine the future of your congregation. The future of your congregation. Now, this is very common in the Christian publishing world, especially when they write books about the church. They want to tell you that, you've got this, you need this book. This is going to determine the future. This is going to shape how you do church. This is going to revolutionize how you're going to do church. This is going to save your church. This is going to double the size of your church. They always make all these big promises. And of course, you got pastors out there struggling, and so they look for anything they can to possibly come up with a solution. And so they buy these books to try to find an answer. And you can sit there and shake your head and say, well, they should just look at the Bible. But if you're a pastor and your livelihood is dependent on how your church is doing, look, man, you can sit there and try to act all spiritual, okay? But that pastor is sitting there trying to figure out, what do I need to do? I got to grow this church. What do I got to do? People are unhappy. What do I do? People are leaving. What do I do? And you start looking for anything and everything, and that's a sad place to be in. It is a sad place to be in. Here's the broader description of the book. A trustworthy and respected guide for pastors and church leadership in the post-quarantine world, providing hope and vision for the future of your congregation. From thousands of surveys of church leaders and in-person consultations. And again, I'm going to refer to him as Tom. Thom just seems weird, but I'm going to go with Tom. When it's names, you never know. When I worked in the medical world, and you would look at the name on the patient's chart, and then you would walk out to call them back, to the doctor, back to do their vitals or whatever the case may be, to give them their test results, whatever. Sometimes I'd look at the name and go, okay, and then you would say it, and I'd be like, no, that's not how you say my name. You're like, well, I don't. It's just the way it looks like on paper. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're gonna go with Thom Rainer. All right, so let's read this again. A trustworthy and respected guide for pastors and church leadership in the post-quarantine world, providing hope and vision for the future of your congregation. From thousands of surveys of church leaders and in-person consultations, Thom Rainer and Church Answers team have gathered the essential wisdom you will need to face the challenges and opportunities that the quarantine crisis creates for the local church. Now stop right here. A couple of interesting things to just reading this. First, they have gathered the essential wisdom that you're going to need to face the challenges and opportunity that the quarantine crisis creates for the local church. Now, please note, how did they gather this essential wisdom? From thousands of surveys of church leaders and in-person consultations. By doing that, they gathered supposedly all the wisdom you and I need. Now, right there always concerns me because, well, wait a minute. We need biblical wisdom. I don't need the wisdom derived from a survey. I don't need wisdom derived from a consultation. Now, you could argue that we can also gain wisdom from the insights of other people. So, as long as the insight coming from these people is biblical, then by all means we need to listen to it. It just makes me a little concerned that the wisdom gathered was through surveys and consultations, not through first and foremost a clear study of Scripture, giving me the biblical principles, and then hearing what churches and religious leaders are doing. I think you need to have that contrast. So when I read the book, that's one of the things I'm going to look for. I'm going to go, wait a minute. Here's what all these church leaders are saying to do, but what does the Scripture say to do? And you have to do that with any book about the church. You can buy 900 books that tell you, this is how you grow the church. This is what you do. This is what you need. But is it really biblical? And then this gets back to the normative principle versus the regulative principle of how we do church. And that we could have that whole discussion again. We'll probably have to have the discussion again when we read this book. So they've gathered all the essential wisdom that you will need to face the challenges and opportunities that the quarantine crisis creates for the local church, including, here we go, here's some things that they want us to think about. A new and better way to lead the gathered church. Now, new and better. We need a new and better way to lead the gathered church. Now, what does that mean? A new and better way. Isn't there just one way? Or how much, again, this comes back to that regulative normative. Like what can you do? What can you change? What has to stay the same? All right, your philosophy there greatly impacts this. A wide open door for growing the digital church. A wide open door for growing the digital church. Now, this one concerns me a little bit. Because the quarantine, the COVID-19 crisis, didn't throw open the door for new opportunities in doing digital church. The internet has been around for a long time. The technology has been around for a long time for pastors to do what I'm doing. Turn on a microphone and talk about what's going on. Talk about issues related to theology, issues related to current events. Talk about any pastors are communicators by nature. I mean, we're supposed to be, apt to teach. We're supposed to be there to communicate the Word of God. And we're supposed to preach in season and out of season. The thinking about spiritual things should be so common that we can turn on a mic at any time and talk about any subject and relate it to the Bible. So I've always been baffled how churches don't use technology. I've always been baffled. I've always been confused. I'm always like, hey, look, when I was on Sermon Audio, I had this vision, like, okay, here's all these pastors on Sermon Audio. Okay, when Sermon Audio and contacted me and we had the discussion about creating the news and focus section of Sermon Audio, my vision was, okay, here's pastors all around the world, all kinds of different time zones. So literally, pastors around the world at any given time could go live, or I wasn't able to do the live feature very well on Sermon Audio. It was very, very convoluted and complicated versus, say, like I'm going live now, which is very easy to do using a Spreaker. But I was like, you could record, go live, and we could talk about whatever's happening in the world. We could be giving, spiritual advice, spiritual direction, and I really could never gather like a team of pastors. Like, okay, hey, I'll be talking about what's going on from, this time to this time, like having like almost like around the clock pastors offering spiritual advice about what's happening in the world. And It's like pastors didn't want to use the technology. It was always weird. The early church met. We always talk about the early church meeting every day. Well, pastors could go live every day and do devotionals, Bible studies. There's so much you can do. And they didn't. So I'm just baffled by okay, now because of COVID-19, now the door is wide open. And in their words, in the description of this book, to grow the digital church. Now that's what concerns me. What does that mean? The digital church. One of the things I have discussed over and over is we've got to figure out what the church is going to look like after COVID-19 is gone. And there's been much discussion. There seems to be a lot of evidence that has demonstrated a lot of people have changed churches during the COVID-19 crisis. So the world is hit with a pandemic. And what Christians do is use that as an opportunity to leave their church and go find another church. You talk about, that just seems so messed up to me. Your pastor's sitting there struggling, trying to figure out what to do. In the meantime, the people are at home going, peace out. I'm going to go window shopping now because all the churches have moved online. I'm going to go window shopping and find a new shiny place to go. And I'm just going to leave you in the middle of a crisis. So that's kind of sad, but I think a lot of churches will look differently as far as their membership makeup after this is all said and done. But here's the thing. I wonder how many people. Now, the initial statistics seem to indicate that this number is low, but I wonder how many will just say, forget it, I'm not going back. I'll just do church from home. Do we have some explosion of a quote-unquote digital church where people stop going to an in-person services? And if that number explodes, then do churches have to just say, wait. We're just going to close down all of our digital media, and we're just going to do in-person preaching. And if you want to hear it, you're going to have to come. That's going to create. I'm really interested how the book is going to handle this. But what does that mean? The door is wide open for the digital church. Okay, and the next thing they have on their list, a moment to rethink the facilities. All right. Okay, now I think, I don't know what that means to rethink the facilities. Is this an idea that do we really need all the facilities do we have? Do we need to build these giant buildings with all of these different things in it? Or do we need to just scale down and just have, a smaller building because we may end up with smaller congregations? Maybe. I don't know what that means there. Next, new strategies for church growth. Oh, you've always got to have that. New strategies. So the old strategies of church growth may not now work in a post-quarantine, post-COVID-19 world. That's going to be interesting. What are going to be the new strategies? And then they have these 3 concluding paragraphs. And again, if you are just joining us, we are looking at this book called The Post-Quarantine Church. It comes out September the 8th. We're looking at it. The book is going to be available. It's already number 1 in new release in I guess under the Christian category from pre-orders. You can pre-order it now. It's $12.34 for the Kindle, $12.99 for the hardcover. And we're kind of reading and trying to find out a little bit about this book. Here's 3 paragraphs to kind of conclude their description. This book is in effect your personal church consultant, helping you plan and prepare for the future. In the midst of heartbreak, tragedy, and struggle due to COVID-19, here's hope, wisdom, encouragement, and vision. This book is valuable for those looking for local church, and pastor resources to enhance church leadership, grow your church, and serve digital and online church communities in the post-quarantine world. As a former pastor and founder of Church Answers, again, I'm going to refer to him as Tom S. Rayner is intimately familiar with the ever-present demands that pastors face. He has spent a lifetime committed to the church and health of the local church. And there you have it. There is the there's the description of the book. I don't know if the book is going to be any good. I don't know if the book is going to be bad. I'm assuming what we're getting ready to get is going to get kind of a small explosion of a lot of books coming out saying, hey, here's how you need to do church now. Hey, here's the way you need to do church. Here's what we need to do. I will argue that if I open the New Testament, and I read everything in the New Testament, I think here's the interesting thing I'm going to find. There are no specific instructions like, here's what you do during a pandemic. Here's what you're doing during a crisis of persecution. Here's what you do when the government turns against you. There's no clear outline. In fact, if we were to take what the Bible tells us to do, it's pretty simple. Whether it's persecution, whether it's plague, whether it's famine, whether it's whatever is happening, whatever it's war, whatever the crisis is, the New Testament seems to state this. Here's what you do. You preach in season and out of season. You proclaim. You do the Great Commission, right? You go, you teach, you preach, you baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and you teach them to obey everything that the Lord has commanded. That's what you have to do. Now, we do see at times meeting in houses. Well, sometimes you may have to meet in a house, maybe during a time of persecution where you can't be out in the open. All right? Is that fear or is that faith? I mean, remember now, the argument is during a pandemic, if you stop meeting, you're living in fear. But if persecution breaks out, then do we break into house churches? Is that fear or is that faith? Or is that just wisdom? I don't know. So I think the Bible would, and church history would argue that seems to be acceptable. But the bottom line is church really is just called to continue to continue to proclaim the truth, preach the gospel, call people to repentance and faith, disciple people, okay? Using church history language, catechize people. You know, give them a doctrinal, theological foundation. That's what we're called to do. Do we need new strategies? Do we need new ways of thinking? I don't know. I'm very interested to see where I'm going to call them the church growth gurus, where they're going to come out now telling you, this is the way you need to do church. And trust me, all you need is one of these books to catch on. All you need is one of them. Remember Purpose Driven Church by Rick Warren? You know, we can go. All you need is the right book that sparks a new movement within the history of the church. Just look at church history. We've had the seeker-sensitive, movement. We've had the purpose-driven church movement. We've had the emerging church movement. All you need is the next book that really sparks a massive. It's for some reason I use the word goes viral, and pastor after pastor, church after church, the pastors are buying the book in bulk. They're reading it. There's conferences, and the next thing you know, that's the new direction of the church. Is 2020 going to be the year that we transition into the next big church movement phase? Are we getting ready to move into a new church movement phase? Whatever the church is going to move into, whatever that next church movement is, church growth movement, whatever you want to call it. Because the churches, they go through these stages. And I think this is 2020 is a year that's going to cause churches to rethink how they do things, reconsider how they do things. And new theories and new ideas are going to emerge. And the new ideas that emerge, some will just be rejected and never heard of from again, and the book will be in the bargain bin, 6 months from now. And then other books will come out, and they'll be the guide, they'll be the church, how to do church Bible for the next, year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, depending how long that church, that particular movement within the church continues. I think we're right there, and I think it's time for a new way of thinking that will emerge. And when I say I think it's time, I'm not saying I think it's time because it's needed, because I think the church is supposed to be bound to what the Bible says. But I'm saying that if you kind of look at all of the other movements, they've kind of come. I mean, the emergent church thing, it's still there, obviously. But I think all of these movements that have been present, seeker-sensitive, purpose-driven, emerging church, all of these movements, I think, have kind of run their course. And I think and because of COVID-19, it's going to spark the next new thing. The next new thing. And I don't know what that next new thing is going to look like. Maybe this book will give us some insight to what it looks like. But I think 2021 is probably where we're going to see that whatever it is begins to emerge, begins to spread, and then we'll see churches begin to transition and change. So there you have it. The name of the book, let me give you the name of the book again. If you're interested, I'm going to definitely read the book, talk about it. Not because I believe this book is going to be the one. I have no idea. I can't make any prediction that this is going to be the book that everyone buys. Typically, you need what you'll have is you'll have kind of these ideas get bounced around, and then you'll have a big famous pastor, a Rick Warren, a Joel Osteen, some celebrity pastor who takes the idea, then they repackage the idea in their book and put their name on the book, and then the average church members buy that, and then they're like, yeah, I want a church like that. So we have to look for which big celebrity pastor throws out his book on how to do church after COVID-19, and that will be the one. This may just give some of the ideas, but I bet you the ideas show up in some celebrity pastor's book, and that's what we'll have to look for. But the name of this book is The Post-Quarantine Church: 6 Urgent Challenges and Opportunities That Will Determine the Future of Your Congregation. And again, I'm going to pronounce his name Tom, Thoms, Rainer, Rainer. It will be released on September the 8th, 2020. You can pre-order it now. Already it's number 1 on Amazon in the Christian category, just from pre-orders alone. Now that could be a hint that this may have some legs, and it may make a little bit of noise and create, a lot of people may be reading it. Or maybe there's just some pastors out there desperate trying to figure out what to do. And they're looking for anything. I don't know what it means, but we'll figure it out together. And you can, well, this is what you can do. I'll end this way. Email me at newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. Give me your predictions. What do you think church is going to look like? What do you think the next big movement's going to look like? The next big movement to hit the church, what is it going to be? Is it going to be a little bit of the emerging church, a little bit of purpose-driven church, or are some of those models now just going to be completely rejected and something new? Is the megachurch era done? Is the megachurch era done? Do we see an explosion of house church? Is the house church movement going to be the new movement of 2021? Or, I could just throw out all kinds of ideas. You let me know what you think. All right, I'll stop right there. We'll be live on the air at 11, starting sometime after 11, probably about 11:05, 11:10. We'll be under VBC, the VBC podcast. And we're gonna start Romans chapter 6. Yeah. What I believe to be the most, Romans 6, 7, part of 8, may be the most difficult section in all of Romans. And I know no one else agrees with me there, but I believe that it is. And, well, it's not going to be your typical way of looking at Romans 6, 7, and 8. I can guarantee you that. So if you want to listen, about 11:05, 11:10 under the VBC podcast. All right, thanks for listening to kind of this impromptu discussion about the new book. And if you need any information about the book, let me know. And we'll definitely do a full review when it is released. All right, everyone have a great day. God bless.